Hey guys, my name is Buster Green, and I am a connoisseur of the best anime in the world. And today I'm randomly dropping an update on Lupin the Third. If you guys like my content, please subscribe. I currently need like 39 subscribers. Hey, that's not much at all. So please subscribe, guys. I'm on the cusp of being monetized, and I really want to be monetized. If I'm not monetized, I might have to resort to a life of crime. Anyway, so as a connoisseur of the world's finest anime, you'd be stupid not to like Lupin the Third. In the 1960s, Lupin basically broke the mold and first introduced Japan to the idea that you can market animation to adults. Something that certain stupider countries are still failing to get. Not naming any names here. Anyway, Lupin has always been anime's James Bond. After a triumphant original season in the 1960s that pretty much started the career of Hayao Miyazaki and gave us Studio Ghibli, Season 2 in the 70s, and then Season 3 in the 80s. After that, for about 20 good years, every year Japan would release a Bond-style Lupin standalone movie. And like the Bond films, each film was handled by a rapidly different creative team, leading to drastic style differences and major changes in the portrayal of the character. Now, this was pretty much the case until the pattern finally broke in 2013, and they went back to just making classic Lupin TV series. After this, we get The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, a hard reboot in the style of the original manga, but following Fujiko. There were also some follow-up movies around the other characters. And then we got Lupin Parts 4, 5, and 6, continuing the tone and style of Lupin Part 2, which was everyone's favorite season. And at the same time, they went back to the formula of Lupin Season 1, where Lupin's gang travels through a country, ransacking it, and getting into trouble. Now, I'm actually currently through the middle of a slow binge of Lupin Season 6. After the very fun Season 4 in Italy, and the good enough Season 5 in France, Season 6 has been a little bit of a letdown. The Sherlock Holmes plot so far, I feel like it's been a complete waste of potential since Holmes is depicted as a deadbeat, and he can't break the status quo and be too aggressive with Lupin. And now they seem to have completely dropped that storyline halfway through the show to go back to random standalone episodes like Part 5 now. The only exceptional episodes I've seen in Season 6 were Episode 0, specifically created as a curtain bow for Jig and Daisuke's original Japanese VA, Kiyoshi Kobayashi, who died shortly after appearing in the episode. And Episode 17 so far is my favorite episode of the season, where they introduce a new character called Lin Feng Wang, a rich, nerdy Chinese girl that has been introduced as a cool, new, and weird antagonist for Lupin. This episode has ended up being probably my favorite episode of the season, and it actually had a strong enough concept that it could have been its own movie or season in its own right or whatever. Lin Feng Wang was kind of like the most interesting development of the entire season, and I really hope she comes back someday as a long-term villain for Lupin. I kind of hope she doesn't completely vanish in the way that minor characters who fight Lupin typically do. Anyway, even though I haven't finished my run-through of Part 6, it's already run its course and finished airing, and TMS is already looking ahead to the next season. And as it turns out, the next season that has just been announced is Lupin the Third Part 0. And oh man, this one is not exciting. It looks kind of hard to stomach if I'm being real. So here's the thing, ever since Lupin the Third Part 2 aired on Toonami back in the mid-2000s, worldwide interest in Lupin the Third has straight up exploded, which has allowed the franchise to really blossom and reinvigorate itself and succeed when it was just starting to get stale in Japan. But it's also left this kind of weird hanging like problem in the air where casual audience who get into Lupin are kind of left asking, where did Lupin come from? He's cool, but what's his origin story? Okay, so here's the thing. Lupin's origin story is the Lupin the Third manga. Unfortunately, the Lupin the Third manga is not something that general audiences can stomach. Because in the Lupin the Third original manga, Lupin is a straight up gangster. He's not a good guy. He's a rapist. He's a murderer. He has fucking razor blades coming out of his fingers. And he casually kills anyone who gets in the way of his plans. Manga Lupin is the dark, diabolical mastermind that was taken from the original French literature and pushed into a crazy modern context. If you ever want hard R, no restriction, no rules Lupin, that's the Lupin of the original manga. That being said, there's a huge void because you have manga Lupin, and then meanwhile you have Miyazaki's Lupin, the most popular version. And even though he's the most popular version, he's arguably the softest version because he is Studio Ghibli Lupin. He's the Lupin that won't hurt a fly, the Lupin with a heart of gold. He's more obsessed with protecting a teenage girl's virginity than he's obsessed with knocking over the local mob and stealing all their money. Sure, he's still obsessed with dating Fujiko, but he's never going to get to third base with her because she doesn't like him back. And honestly, all the characters in Miyazaki's Lupin have their edges sanded off. And yeah, they're fun and all, but they're never going to do anything crazy. Anyway, I want to say that while there's been a flux between the G-rated Lupin and the R-rated Lupin, since the Adult Swim version was the one that really hit it big with audience in the US, lately we've settled down with a middle-of-the-line Lupin, kind of a PG-13 Lupin, who's sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and is mostly trying to match the tone that Lupin in Part 2 had. But then we go back to this obsession with reboots, because there's no proper origin of Lupin because people don't want to read the manga, which is the origin of Lupin. And then we get Lupin turning into one of those characters like the Joker, where he's larger than life, and he can't really draw a sensible line of, oh, I'm a person who doesn't want to work a normal job, to I'm suddenly the world's most successful criminal, and I'm constantly on the run for the law, but also I have an honor system and I won't hurt innocent people. Anyway, so since Lupin was on Adult Swim, there's been this deluge of Lupin origin stories to try and fill this void that has suddenly been created by the Western audience. The first one we get is 2002's Lupin III Episode 0, seemingly a tailor-made movie directly designed to tie in with the Adult Swim show. It's like this really weird origin movie where it does the bare minimum of establishing the characters, it forms the Lupin gang, and then it riffs on the original manga to introduce Goemon and set up some stuff. Although it bizarrely leads into the events of Lupin III Season 2, which doesn't really make sense because Season 2 is the sequel to Season 1. Anyway, it tried. After that, American company tried to make a live-action Western Lupin reboot, but it never got off the ground, even though it was optioned to Steven Spielberg. He was too busy making an Uncanny Valley version of Tintin to do it, so just no one could get it together. Then there was about a period of 10 years where we had known more Lupin reboots until The Woman Called Fujiko Mine came out in 2012. Now I want to say this one's the closest in terms of getting that dangerous criminal gangster vibe that the original manga had. Lupin has sex in this one, Lupin is a gangster again. It's told from Fujiko's perspective, but it at least wanders off into the serious nature of the original Lupin manga until it does its own thing and goes into a bunch of crazy subplots where suddenly Fujiko has to fight against an insane homosexual stalker who's jealous of her beauty and her ability to seduce men. And then at the end of the show, Fujiko fights an evil supervillain parody of historical figure Helen Keller, which is kind of par for the course with Lupin movies. After that, we got 2014's horrible live-action Lupin movie. This movie is just straight up trash. It's heavily downvoted online because it's not only the worst Lupin movie, but it's a bad movie period in its own right because apparently it couldn't even come up with an original plot. It had to steal one from a Korean soap opera. And if you guys really want to watch a good live-action Lupin movie, they actually made one in 1974, The Psychokinetic Strategy. Now in this movie, all the characters look completely ass wrong, but it has more the spirit of Lupin, plus it has that extra unexpected entertainment value of being a psychedelic 70s Japanese spy movie, so you're really not sure what you're going to expect. Oh wait, is Lupin going to bang a bunch of nuns? No, those nuns are going to kill him. Wow, unexpected. Also in 2017, Hulu made a live-action Zenigata origin story series. Why? Did anyone want that? Anyway, I've never seen it because it's a Japanese Hulu exclusive, but people tell me that the production values were really cheap, so it's not worth watching. Now, after that, we got the Lupin the First CGI movie, which was the first CGI movie. This movie is not the origin of Lupin, but it was kind of advertised like it was. Anyway, despite the fake advertising, I liked it. The animation was great. Jigen was a little bit too sexy, but overall it was your cliche basic Lupin story set in the 60s, where Lupin robs some Nazi holdouts and does his typical shenanigans. I was impressed by the way they transitioned from 2D animation to CG animation, and did that pretty stylishly. Also, they said in the 60s, which avoids a lot of the contemporary Lupin problems where heist crime is just way too difficult to pull off in a world where everyone has cell phones. Anyway, that brings us to Lupin the Third Season 6 again, which is what I'm currently watching. They're definitely flirting with the idea of covering Lupin's origin in this series. I'm not sure if they're going to drop it in the last couple episodes, or if it's a subconscious setup for this Lupin Season 0 bullshit. But alright, now let's talk about Lupin Season 0. and what bullshit it is. First off, it looks bad. No one asked for Lupin Muppet Babies, and it's also really weird that this series is also set in the 60s, because technically speaking, if we're going with the original 60s Lupin would have had to have grown up in the 40s or the 50s. But okay, maybe that's some kind of miscommunication. Maybe it does take place in the 40s and the 50s, or maybe it does get to adult Lupin in the 60s. I don't know, it's not out yet. But the thing that repulses me right off the bat is how bad looking young Lupin looks like in this art. Like, he doesn't look like Lupin as a kid. He looks like Lupin as a man with a bad haircut and a midget's body. I feel like they just completely failed to de-age Lupin for this, and it looks completely creepy to me. Like, they say that this is going to be a manga adaptation for Season 0, but I gotta call bullshit on this, because you're not gonna throw out baby Lupin and then have baby Lupin do the classic Lupin is a rapist, Lupin is a murderer, Lupin has razors in his fingers, Lupin is the greatest criminal genius of the 20th century. All those crazy manga storylines that really built up the character. I think they might do storylines inspired by those stories, but not straight adaptations of them. I mean, they'll probably do the Goemon origin arc again, because they seem to love adapting that one. I mean, I guess it's the funnest story. But to be honest with you guys, I have very low expectations for this Season 0 based on the trailer they put out. Like, okay, it could be good if Lupin isn't a child for the entire series, but if he is, just fucking shoot me now, because then that's fucking Star Wars Episode 1 all over again. I hope that they play it kind of like Gundam the Origin, where he's born, he's a child, but then by at least the second episode, he's suddenly a man. Hell, maybe I'll be wrong and Season 0 will be amazing, but so far from this first trailer, I'm not impressed. If they do age Lupin up into a man midway through the show, and then they start throwing out true the original Lupin manga stories, where he is a gangster and he is dangerous, it could lead to some pretty cool action, but right now it's just a wait and see situation, so let's wait and see. I'm you, Buster Green, and if this video gets enough hits, maybe I'll review Lupin Season 0, or maybe I won't. Who knows? Please subscribe and find out what I do in the future too. Alright, thanks guys. Good night.